Hello, my dear friends. Your eyes are closed, but you can feel it in your hands. A single sheet of thin, yet resilient, Japanese paper. It's still warm, the ink barely dry, carrying the faintest scent of soot and sweet paste. You see the vibrant lines of a Kabuki actor, his face a mask of defiance, or the serene curve of a bridge arching over a placid river. This is the world of ukiyo-e, the pictures of the floating world. A world of fleeting beauty, captured forever. It seems so peaceful, so perfect. But let's be honest, if you were actually transported back to this world, the sheer physical labor, toxic materials and cutthroat competition would likely do you in before your first print series was even finished. This serene beauty was born from a world of grit, sweat, and relentless pressure. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. It's your quiet support that allows me to keep pulling back these curtains on the past. Now, find that perfect position. Imagine yourself in a quiet room, the gentle sound of rain perhaps tapping against the roof. You're safe and warm, looking at one of these beautiful prints, a single candle casting a soft, flickering glow across its surface. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your journey begins not in a dusty workshop or a silent artist's studio, but in a place of surprising power. You are kneeling on a pristine tatami mat, the scent of fresh straw and expensive incense filling the air. Before you sits the publisher, a man like the great Tsutaya Jizuba. He is the maestro, the conductor of this entire orchestra of art. He wears a simple but exquisitely made silk kimono, its dark fabric seeming to absorb the soft light of the room. He holds a porcelain cup of pale green tea, its warmth steaming gently into the cool air. With a soft, almost reverent gesture, he unrolls a scroll of paper. On it is a proposal, a vision, a series of prints depicting the 100 most famous views of the capital city, Edo, or perhaps a collection capturing the transient beauty of the most celebrated courtesans of the Yoshiwara district. He speaks in low, measured tones about aesthetics, about capturing the spirit of the age. He discusses the need for subtlety, for elegance, for a design that will not just please the eye but stir the soul. He is a patron, a connoisseur, a man who champions art for its own sake. In this quiet, orderly room, you feel as though you are witnessing the birth of something sacred. A grand artistic undertaking funded by a man of taste and vision, destined to become a cultural treasure. This is the illusion, the pristine image of the refined taster-maker, carefully curating the beauty of his generation. It's a lovely thought, isn't it? That great art springs from such a pure and noble source. But now, let's slide open the paper, screen behind him. Not the one that leads to the tranquil garden, but the one he keeps closed. The air that hits you from this other room is entirely different. The delicate scent of incense is gone, replaced by the sharp, metallic smell of ink, the musty odor of bundled paper, and the undeniable aroma of human sweat and anxiety. This isn't a tea room. It's a command center. The illusion of the serene art patron dissolves in an instant. This man is not a connoisseur. He is a venture capitalist, a movie producer, a record label executive, all rolled into one. And his grand vision is, first and foremost, a business proposition, calculated with the cold precision of an abacus. You see, the publisher fronts all the money. Every single coin. He pays for the artist's design, for the expensive blocks of cherry wood, for the reams of mulberry paper, the costly pigments, the wages of the carver and the printer. The entire, complex, and labor-intensive process is a gamble, and it is his gamble. Alone. So, that artistic vision he spoke of so eloquently, it's a market forecast. The series on the 100 famous views of Edo wasn't chosen for its spiritual resonance. It was chosen because a rival publisher had a bestseller with a series on the 53 stations of the Tokaido, and he needs to compete. The series on the beautiful courtesans. It's because a particular teahouse has a new star, and her face is the hottest commodity in the city. Her likeness will sell, and it will sell fast. His quiet room is a fade. His real work happens in the noisy, chaotic back office. Listen. You can hear the frantic clacking of the abacus as a clerk calculates potential profits versus the rising cost of blue pigment. You hear the hurried footsteps of a messenger, bringing news of a government censor who is in a foul mood this week, meaning certain designs will have to be altered or scrapped entirely. You hear the publisher himself, his voice no longer low and measured, but sharp and demanding as he haggles with a paper merchant, trying to lock in a price before it skyrockets. He's not just commissioning art, he's managing a high-risk, high-reward startup in one of the most competitive markets imaginable. A single failed series that doesn't capture the public's fickle imagination could bankrupt him. And bankruptcy in Edo, Japan is not a gentle affair. It is a social death, a humiliation from which there is often no return. This is why everything is a calculation. Why, you might wonder, would such a beautiful art form be born from such a brutally commercial environment? Because it wasn't for emperors or shoguns. It was for the common people, the merchants, the artisans, the clerks who finally had a little disposable income and a hunger for entertainment. They were the audience. Ukiyo-e was popular culture, the posters, magazines and trading cards of its day. And popular culture has to sell to survive. The publisher's genius wasn't just in spotting artistic talent, but in reading the pulse of the city. He had to know what people were talking about, who they were obsessed with, what they dreamed of. His seemingly ruthless focus on profit was what allowed this art to be so vibrant, so immediate, and so deeply connected to the lives of ordinary people. It ensured the art was not an isolated, sterile thing for a museum, but a living, breathing part of the city itself. The publisher's calculations are complete. The abacus is silent. He has weighed the risks and determined the path forward. An order is given. A small advance is paid. And now that cold, hard business plan, born of market trends and financial desperation, must be transformed into something else entirely. It must become a line, a curve, a human form, a task that falls to a very different kind of person, in a very different kind of room. The publisher's commission, slip of paper with a few terse notes, feels heavy in your hand. It is not an invitation. It is an order. And so you make your way through the bustling streets of Edo to the workshop that bears the name of a master. Perhaps it is the studio of Utamaro, the unparalleled painter of feminine beauty, or Hokusai, the old man mad about drawing. You are an artist here. When people buy the finished prints, they will see the master's name, his signature proudly displayed. They will imagine him as you now imagine him, a solitary figure, kneeling in a state of deep concentration. They picture a private, quiet space, where the only sound is the gentle, rhythmic scratch of a single, perfect brush against the finest paper. They see a genius, a visionary, channeling the very soul of the floating world into sublime images, his mind untroubled by commerce or deadlines. In this fantasy, every line is born of inspiration, every color choice a moment of divine revelation. He is the beginning and the end of the creative process, a singular talent whose work is untouchable. This is the beautiful, romantic myth of the lone artist. It's the story we still tell ourselves today about creativity. It's a powerful illusion, and one the publisher is more than happy to encourage, because a famous name sells. But it is an illusion, nonetheless. Now, slide open the door to the studio where you work. The serene fantasy evaporates in a cloud of noise and activity. This is not a sanctuary of quiet contemplation. It is a factory floor for images. The space is cramped, crowded with low drawing tables. The air is thick with the competing smells of fresh ink, old ink, rice paste glue, cheap lamp oil, and the faint, ever-present odor of the nearby privy. Young apprentices, some no older than 10, scurry back and forth, grinding inkstones, cleaning brushes and tidying up scraps of paper. Their hands are permanently stained black. You are not the master. You are one of perhaps a dozen artists and assistants working under his name. You take your place at your small desk, your knees already starting to ache from those long hours of kneeling. The master himself, the man whose name is a brand, might be at the head of the room, looking more like a foreman than a muse-struck genius. He is reviewing work, his voice a sharp, low critique. The line of that shoulder is clumsy. Do it again. The eyes lack spirit. They look like dead fish. Use too much glue in the sizing on this paper. It will bleed. He is the art director, the final authority, but he is not the one doing all or even most of the work. This is the shocking reality behind the elegant brushwork. That print of a beautiful woman, signed by Utamaro. He may have drawn the face and the general outline of the figure. But you. Your specialty is textiles. You are the one who will spend the next 10 hours meticulously rendering the intricate pattern on her kimono, ensuring every tiny blossom and swirling stream is perfect. The man next to you specializes in hair. He can draw 1,000 different elaborate hairstyles, each strand perfectly laced. Another artist across the room is a master of backgrounds, able to create a sense of deep space with just a few clever lines. The final drawing, the hanshite, is not the work of one man's hand. It is a college of specialized skills, an assembly line product carefully pieced together under the unforgiving eye of the master. Your genius, your personal flair, is entirely subsumed into the house style. You are a ghost, your hand invisible behind the famous signature. And why this, sister? Why crush individual artistry under the weight of this collaborative, almost industrial, process? You can thank the publisher for that. Remember his frantic calculations. He needs product. And he needs it now. The city's obsession with a new Kabuki actor won't last. The cherry blossoms will fall. The public's appetite is insatiable and fickle. A single artist, no matter how brilliant, could never work fast enough to meet this demand. The studio system, with its division of labor, is a machine, built for speed and consistency. It ensures that every print bearing the master's name has a certain level of quality and adheres to the style the public has come to love and expect. It is a brilliant solution to a commercial problem. It allows art to be produced at the speed of popular culture. The publisher gets his product on time, the master gets a cut of every sale that bears his brand, and you get to work. Your part is done. You have drawn the most exquisite, complex brocade pattern of your life. The master has inspected it, given a rare, terse nod of approval and added his signature seal in the corner, claiming it as his own. The final drawing is now complete. It is a masterpiece of black ink on thin, semi-transparent paper. The unique, beautiful, hand-drawn object. You feel a small, secret surge of pride looking at it. But there is also a knot of melancholy in your stomach. Because you know what happens next. This delicate drawing, the culmination of so much skill and labor, is about to be handed over to another craftsman, a man whose very job is to destroy it. The finished drawing, the hanshite, is now in your hands. But you are no longer the artist. You are the carver, the horishi. You work in a small room, perhaps just a corner of your own modest home. The light here is everything. You have positioned your low bench to catch the morning sun, its clean, sharp rays slanting across the work surface. When night falls, you will work by the flickering, greasy light of a single oil lamp, its flame casting long, dancing shadows that threaten to deceive your eyes. In the popular imagination, the woodblock itself is a magical object. People see the final print, with its impossibly fine lines and perfect registration, and they assume the block is a marvel of precision, perhaps created with some lost, secret technique. They see the name of the artist, Hokusai or Hiroshi, and they imagine he not only drew the image, but also carved it, his genius, flowing directly from his mind, through his hands, and into the very wood. This image of the artist-carver, a single creator controlling the entire process, is a powerful and romantic one. It places the artwork in a realm of pure, unadulterated genius. But you know the truth. You slide the precious drawing, the one a team of artists labored over, onto the surface of a prepared block of cherry wood. The wood is cool and smooth under your fingertips, polished to an almost satin-like finish. It smells faintly of its own sweet sap. Now comes the moment that would make any art lover gasp in horror. You take a pot of rice paste glue and you carefully, methodically, paste the drawing face down onto the woodblock. The beautiful, one-of-a-kind artwork is now permanently bonded to the block, its image showing faintly through the thin paper. It can never be removed. Its existence as a drawing is over. Its sole purpose now is to be a guide for your knife. And with its destruction, this responsibility for the entire project shifts squarely onto your shoulders. This is the shocking reality that underpins the carver's craft. You are not a creative artist, you are a human machine for translating an image from one medium to another. And your work allows for zero error. You pick up your main tool, the kugatana, a small, sharp knife. You hold it not like a pencil, but like a dagger, the blade pointing towards you. You will not be pushing the knife away from you, but pulling it, your thumb guiding the slice along the lines of the drawing. You begin with the key block, the one that will print all the black outlines. Every single line drawn by the artist must be preserved. This means you must carve away the wood on both sides of each line, leaving the line itself standing proud, a razor-thin ridge. Think about that for a moment. For a single black line on the final print, you must make two perfectly parallel, impossibly precise cuts. Your breath is shallow and steady. Your shoulders ache. The muscles in your back are tense knots. For hours, you do not move, except for your hands and your forearms. The only sound is the soft, whispering show of your blade slicing through the wood fibers. A wisp of wood, no thicker than a hair, curls up from the blade. Then another. And another. You are carving the delicate strands of a woman's hair, the intricate scales of a koi fish, the faint veins on a leaf. A moment's distraction, a sudden noise from the street, a muscle twitch from sheer exhaustion, and your knife could slip. The slip of a single millimeter could sever a crucial line, rendering the entire block, the expensive, carefully seasoned block of Yamazakura cherry wood, completely useless. The publisher's investment, the artist's work, all of it, would be lost. You would not be paid, and your reputation would be ruined. The pressure is immense, a physical weight on your chest. So why this terrifying, high-stakes process? Why was the carver, this unsung hero of the process, subjected to such unrelenting pressure? It was the logic of mass production. The key block you are carving will be the master template for the entire print run. It is the skeleton upon which everything else will be built. Its precision is not an artistic choice, it is a technical necessity. Every subsequent color block will be printed from this key block's impression, and they must all align perfectly. If your lines are not exact, the colors in the final print will be misaligned, a blurry, amateurish mess. The publisher's dream of a beautiful, desirable object would become a pile of expensive, unsellable trash. Your intense, solitary labor is the only thing that guarantees the consistency and quality of thousands of finished prints. You are the quality control, the master machinist, the living embodiment of the phrase measure twice, cut once, except you must cut thousands of times and never, ever be wrong. The light begins to fade. Your eyes burn from the strain. The pile of delicate wood shavings around your bench has grown into a small mountain. But the key block is finished. You run your finger very, very gently over the raised lines. They feel sharp and perfect. You have not slipped. You have succeeded. But the work is far from over. This is just one block. For a print with 10 colors, 10 more blocks will be needed, each one carved with the same agonizing precision. For now, though, you can clean your tools and prepare for the next stage. The block, now a landscape of sharp ridges and deep valleys, is ready to be passed on. It is ready to meet its other half, the ink and the printer. The carved block arrives at your workshop. You are the printer, the shurishi. When people admire a finished ukiyo-e print, they are drawn to the colors. The vibrant persimmon orange of a kimono, the deep, mysterious indigo of the night sky, the delicate blush on a courtesan's cheek. They imagine these colors being applied with the same delicate precision as the artist's brush, a clean, quiet, almost magical process. The finished object, after all, is a model of grace and cleanliness. Not a single smudge, not a misplaced drop of ink. It is a testament to order and control. The fantasy is one of a pristine studio, where a craftsman in clean robes dabs colors onto the block as if he were painting on silk. A place where beauty is born from beauty. You laugh at the thought. A bitter, weary laugh. You wipe your hands on your apron, but it's a futile gesture. The apron is already stiff with dried rice paste and smeared with every color of the rainbow. Your hands, your fingernails, your forearms, they are permanently stained. The grime is so deep it will never truly wash away. Now, you open the door to your workshop, and the illusion of a clean, serene studio is instantly shattered by a wall of smells and sounds. The primary scent is not of art, but of labor. It's the sharp, acrid smell of pigment chemicals, the earthy, slightly sour scent of damp paper, and the constant, cloying sweetness of rice paste glue, which you mix yourself. The air is humid, a necessity for keeping the paper pliable, and in the summer months, the room is suffocatingly hot and steamy. The floor is perpetually damp and sticky. In the corner, a young apprentice, his face smudged with black, rhythmically pounds rice in a large mortar to make the paste. Thump. 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 It is a sound that will beat in your ears all day long. This is the shocking reality of the printer's world. It is not a studio. It is a sweatshop. You are not so much a fine artist as a human printing press, and your work is a feat of endurance. You take the precious key block, the one the carver nearly went blind perfecting, and you lay it on your low printing stand. You take a daub of black ink, made from pine soot and animal glue, and you begin to work it into the block with a stiff brush. Then, you take a sheet of dampened washi paper, handmade from mulberry bark, and you lay it carefully onto the block. You feel for the registration marks, the smaller shaped guide called the Kent that the carver cut into the corner. This is the secret to perfect alignment. You must place the paper into this guide with absolute precision. Now comes the part that would break a lesser man's back. You grab your bairn, a simple-looking pad made of coiled cord and covered in a bamboo sheath. You grip it firmly and begin to rub it over the back of the paper, applying firm, even pressure. Your whole body is involved in this motion. You lean into it, your shoulders, back, and arm muscles screaming in protest. You are not just rubbing, you are transferring the ink from the raised lines of the block onto the fibers of the paper. You must feel the connection through the bairn. Too little pressure, and the lines will be faint and broken. Too much, and you risk tearing the delicate paper or blurring the ink. You peel the paper off the block. It's a perfect impression of these black outlines. One down. 999 to go. And that's just for the first colour. Once the entire edition is printed with the key block, you must clean it, put it away, and pull out the first colour block. Let's say it's for the sky. You mix the blue pigment, a beautiful, expensive shade derived from the dayflower, and apply it to the new block. You take one of the black and white prints, place it back on the printing stand, aligning it perfectly to the Kent, and you rub again with the bairn. Then the next sheet. And the next. For a print with 10 colours, you will repeat this entire process 10 times for every single print. You will handle each individual sheet of paper 10 times. An edition of 1,000 prints means 10,000 individual impressions, 10,000 moments of back-breaking, repetitive labour. So why this brutally physical, mind-numbingly repetitive process? Because it was the only way to achieve the desired effect. The subtle variations in colour. The beautiful bokashi effect where one colour fades gently into another, these were not accidents. They were the result of your skill. You could wipe some of the pigment off the block before printing to create a lighter shade, or add a bit of water to create a soft gradation. These were not the choices of the artist in his studio. They were the choices of you, the printer, hunched over your block in the humid, smelly workshop. Your physical labour was the final, essential stage of the artistic process. The publisher demanded a large quantity of prints, and the public demanded they be beautiful and complex. The only way to bridge that gap was through your sweat and your aching muscles. You were the final alchemist, transforming raw pigment and sheer physical force into a thing of delicate, colourful beauty. The last print of the day is done. Your arms feel like lead, and your back is a solid sheet of pain. Piles of finished, coloured prints lie carefully stacked, each separated by a slip sheet to prevent smudging. They are beautiful. From a distance, they look effortless, but you know the truth. You know that every vibrant hue is a monument to your exhaustion. And as you look at the perfect impression, your eyes drawn to the woodblock itself, the silent partner in your daily struggle. You stand in the wood merchant's yard, the air thick with the scent of sawdust and resin. All around you are stacks of lumber, aging and seasoning in the open air. As a publisher or a master carver, your eye is drawn to one wood and one wood only, Yamazakura, the wild mountain cherry. In the world of ukiyo-e, cherry wood is king. The finished woodblock, once carved, is an object of reverence. It is seen as the perfect medium, the platonic ideal of a printing surface. Its grain is exceptionally fine and hard, capable of holding the most delicate, hair-thin lines without splintering or chipping. It is stable, resisting the warp and weft of humidity. It is, in essence, the silent, flawless partner in the creation of beauty. The glamorous illusion is that these perfect blocks of wood were readily available, a gift from nature, waiting patiently to be transformed into art. The carver simply selected a perfect piece, and the wood, in its innate perfection, submitted to the artist's will. But that's not the reality you face here in the lumber yard. Finding the perfect piece of cherry wood is a battle. You run your hand over a plank. It feels smooth, but you are looking for what you cannot see. You are searching for hidden flaws. An internal knot, an unseen crack, a subtle ripple in the grain that could send a carver's knife astray. The wood is not inert, it is a living, breathing thing, full of secrets and potential betrayals. This is the first shocking truth. The perfect block is incredibly rare. The Yamazakura tree must be old, allowed to grow slowly on a cold mountainside to ensure its grain is dense and tight. It must be felled in winter, when the sap is low. Then, the real work begins. The log must be sawn into planks, not with the grain, but across it, to create the plank grain blocks that are the standard for ukiyo-e. This is already a wasteful process. Then, the planks must be seasoned for years, sometimes a decade, slowly drying out to achieve stability. During this long wait, 1,000 things can go wrong. The wood can warp, twisting into a shape that will never lie flat on a printer's bench. It can crack, a fatal flaw that renders it useless. And then, there are the enemies you can't see at first. You tap a plank, and listen intently. You are listening for the telltale hollow sound of a woodworm infestation. You see a series of tiny pinpricks on the surface of another plank, the exit holes of a powder-puffed beetle. You know that inside, the wood has been turned into a network of tunnels, a fragile honeycomb of dust, utterly worthless. You might spend a small fortune on a stack of cherry wood, only to discover years later that half of it is unusable. It's a constant war against nature, time, and biology. The beautiful, stable block of the illusion is the survivor of a brutal process of elimination. And why this obsession with cherry, despite all the difficulty and expense? Why not use a cheaper, more pliable wood? The answer lies in the harsh economics of the printing process itself. Remember the printer and his baron. Remember the immense pressure he applies, over and over and over again. A softer wood, like pine or magnolia, would be easier to carve, yes, but after a few hundred impressions, the delicate lines would begin to wear down. The sharp edges of a courtesan's hairpin would become blunt. The intricate pattern of a samurai's armor would blur. The print quality would degrade, and the publisher would be left with a block that could no longer produce a saleable image. The hardness of cherry wood was a form of insurance. It was an investment. A well-carved cherry block could withstand thousands of impressions, meaning a single, expensive carving could generate revenue for a very long time. A popular design could be reprinted again and again, whenever public demand resurfaced. The publisher's initial outlay on the expensive wood and the master carver was recouped over the long life of the block. So, the choice of wood was not an aesthetic one. It was a brutally practical business decision. The wood's resistance to the carver's knife and the printer's baron was precisely what made it so valuable. Its stubborn, unyielding nature was the very source of its worth. You finally select a piece. It's expensive, more than you wanted to pay, but it seems perfect. It is planed smooth, its surface like pinkish silk. The grain is straight, the color even. You have it delivered to the carver's workshop, a perfect raw material for a perfect piece of art. The carver, as we know, will then glue the master drawing onto it and begin his terrifyingly precise work. But even then, the wood can have one last, cruel trick up its sleeve. As the carver removes slivers of wood, he can release hidden tensions within the block, causing a sudden, unexpected crack to appear, undoing hours of painstaking work. The perfect material can betray you at the very last second. The block, however, holds. The carver succeeds. The printer has done his work. The final prints are pulled. They are beautiful, but they are printed on something just as important and just as deceptively complex as the block itself, the paper. And the story of that paper begins not in a clean studio, but in a place that smells far worse than even the printer's workshop. You hold the finished print in your hands. It feels impossibly delicate, yet strong. The paper, known as washi, is one of the unsung heroes of ukiyo-e. It is thin enough to be translucent, allowing the light to pass through and give the colors a luminous glow. Yet it is strong enough to withstand the repeated, punishing impressions of this printing process without tearing. When people look at a print, they admire the paper's elegance, its creamy texture, its almost cloth-like resilience. They imagine it being made in a serene mountain village by artisans engaged in a clean, zen-like craft. The illusion is one of purity, pure mountain water, pure mulberry fibers, a pure and ancient process creating a sheet of pristine paper, ready to receive the artist's vision. It is the perfect, passive canvas. Now, let's travel to that mountain village where your paper is made. It is winter, the only time of year this work can be done. The air is bitingly cold. And the first thing that hits you is not the purity, but the stench. It is a deeply unpleasant, cloying, slightly rotten smell that clings to the back of your throat. This is the shocking reality of traditional paper making. It is a process that is freezing, filthy, and foul-smelling from start to finish. You are standing beside a steaming cauldron set over a wood fire. Inside is a bubbling, sloshing mess of mulberry branches, ash, and water. The branches are being boiled to loosen their bark. The lye from the wood ash is a caustic substance, and the steam that billows from the pot carries its chemical stink across the village. Once the branches are cooked, they are pulled from the hot water. Workers, mostly women, with hands raw and red from the cold, stand in the icy water of a river. They must peel the outer, dark layer of bark from the inner, white layer. Their fingers are numb, but their work must be fast and precise. This inner bark, the ukiyo-e, is the raw material of your beautiful paper. But it's not ready yet. This pristine white bark is then brought back and boiled again, this time in a lye solution, to soften the fibers further. After that, it is taken to the river again for a long, laborious rinsing process to remove every trace of the caustic lye. And then comes the most grueling part. The cleaned, softened fibers are laid out on stone slabs. Workers take up heavy wooden mallets and begin to beat the fibers, rhythmically and relentlessly, for hours on end. The wetch. The wetch. The whack. They are not just flattening the fibers, they are meticulously breaking them down, separating each individual strand. This is what will give the finished paper its incredible strength. It is exhausting, mind-numbing work, performed in the bitter cold. And the smell. The smell of wet, pulping organic matter is not a pleasant one. Only now, after all this stinking, freezing, back-breaking labor, does the process begin to resemble the illusion. The beaten pulp is mixed with water and a sticky formation aid derived from the roots of the ukiyo-e plant, creating a thick, slimy slurry in a large vat. The papermaker, standing in the frigid workshop, dips a bamboo screen into the slurry, lifts it, and with a series of exquisitely controlled rocking motions allows the water to drain away, leaving a thin, perfectly even sheet of tangled fibers on this screen. This sheet is then laid onto a felt pad, a process called couching. A stack of these wet sheets is pressed to squeeze out the water, and finally, the individual damp sheets are brushed onto smooth wooden boards to dry in the sun. So why this incredibly arduous and unpleasant process? Why not just use a simpler method? The answer, once again, lies in the demands of the printmaker. The cheap, machine-made paper would never survive. Remember the printer, soaking the paper to make it pliable. A lesser paper would turn to mush. Remember him pressing down with the baron, 10 separate times for 10 different color blocks. A lesser paper would tear or peel, its surface fuzzing up and blurring the image. The very strength that was beaten into the ukiyo-e fibers by those workers with their wooden mallets is what allows the paper to endure this punishment. The long, unbroken fibers lock together to form a sheet that is more like a fabric than a simple piece of paper. The papermaker's craft was not about creating a passive surface, it was about engineering a high-performance material. The publisher knew that using cheap paper would be a false economy, leading to a massive failure rate at the printer's workshop. The foul-smelling, freezing, and punishing reality of papermaking was the secret ingredient that made the entire ukiyo-e process possible. You look again at the print in your hand. The paper is no longer just a passive background. It is a testament to the endurance of the women who froze their hands in the river, to the strength of the men who beat the pulp into submission. The luminous quality you so admired is not an accident of purity. but the hard-won result of a dirty, difficult job. The paper holds its colours so well. And those colours, they have their own secrets to tell. Your gaze drifts across the finished print, lingering on the colours. They are the lifeblood of the image. You see the brilliant, fiery red of a festival banner, the cheerful, sunny, yellow of a child's kimono, and the deep, verdant green of a pine tree. The colours are so harmonious, so vibrant, they seem to sing. The illusion presented is one of pure, joyful artistry. We imagine the printer at his bench, surrounded by clean, beautiful porcelain pots filled with luminous pigments, like a watercolorist's palette. He selects his colours based on aesthetics alone, choosing the perfect shade to evoke a mood or capture the light. The colours themselves are seen as being as beautiful and benign as the images they create. They are just colour. Benign, simple, beautiful. But now, lean in closer. Not to the print, but to the printer's workshop. Let's look inside those porcelain pots. The reality of these colours is far from benign. In fact, many of them are downright nasty, derived from toxic substances or unsettling organic sources. The brilliant red you so admire. It's often vermilion, a pigment made from mercury sulfide. It's a potent neurotoxin. The printer, mixing this with his bare hands day after day, is slowly poisoning himself. That vibrant yellow? It could be orpiment, an arsenic-based mineral pigment, also highly toxic. It was known in the West as King's Yellow, and its use was notoriously dangerous. The beautiful, rich green is often a blend of that toxic yellow orpiment and a blue pigment. Working with these substances was a daily dance with long-term illness. Headaches, tremors, and a slow, creeping sickness were the unlisted price of creating these vibrant hues. And it's not just poison. Some of the pigments are simply unpleasant. That lovely, affordable red, that wasn't vermilion. It's likely binny, a pigment derived from safflower petals. To create the most brilliant colour, the paste was often mixed with plum vinegar that had been soured in a very particular way, giving it a sharp, unpleasant odour. Some yellows were derived from soaking the bark of the kahada tree, a process that created a bitter, medicinal smell. A common brown pigment was made from kakishibi, the fermented juice of unripe persimmons, a substance so astringent and smelly it was also used to waterproof paper umbrellas and cure wood. The printer's workshop didn't smell like an art studio, it smelled like a strange and sometimes dangerous apothecary shop. The most shocking reality, however, might be the beautiful, pristine white. The white of the snow on Mount Fuji, the white of a woman's powdered face in the print. This was often lead white. One of the most common and most poisonous pigments in history. The printers, the artists, everyone involved in the process would have been exposed to lead dust. We know today that lead poisoning causes devastating neurological damage, developmental issues in children, and a host of other debilitating ailments. The apprentices, grinding these pigments, sweeping the floors, would have been breathing this in constantly. That perfect, snowy white, the very symbol of purity in the art, was in fact a source of slow, creeping death. So, why on earth would they use these dangerous and disgusting materials to create something so beautiful? Why would a society so attuned to aesthetics embrace such ugliness in its creation? The reasons are a mix of pragmatism, ignorance, and chemistry. First, many of these toxic minerals were simply the most vibrant and permanent pigments available. The arsenic-based orpiment produced a yellow of unmatched brilliance and opacity. Lead white gave a solid, bright white that other pigments couldn't match. They were chosen because they worked. The publisher wanted prints that would pop, that would catch a customer's eye from across a crowded shop. Vibrant colours sold prints. The long-term health of an anonymous printer was, tragically, not a major factor in the calculation. Second, while the dangers of some substances were vaguely known, the specific mechanisms of heavy metal poisoning were not understood at all. There was no concept of parts per million or long-term cumulative exposure. Sickness was often attributed to bad air, imbalance of humours, or spiritual causes. A printer's tremor might be blamed on too much sake or a lack of piety, not the mercury pigment he handled every day. They simply didn't have the scientific framework to understand the true nature of the risk they were running. The desire for a specific colour, a specific visual effect, trumped the vague and poorly understood dangers. The beauty of the print was the goal, and the materials were simply the means to that end. The poison was invisible in the final product. The stench of the fermented persimmon juice faded as the ink dried. All that was left was the glorious image. The ugliness of the process was a secret, hidden behind the curtain of the finished artwork. And these colours were used to depict all manner of subjects, from landscapes to legends. But their most famous application was in capturing the stars of the floating world, the glamorous actors of the Kabuki stage. And those actors had their own toxic secrets. The print you now hold depicts a man in a dramatic pose. His eyes are crossed in a powerful glare, a my pose designed to stop the show and elicit a roar from the crowd. His face is a mask of stark white, with bold red and black lines exaggerating his features into something superhuman. This is a print of a Kabuki actor, a superstar of the Edo period. These prints were the equivalent of movie posters, collected by adoring fans. The actors they depicted were icons of style and masculinity, their on-stage personas embodying heroism, romance, and thrilling drama. The illusion is one of immense glamour and power. These men seemed to live lives as epic as the characters they played, adored by the public, their every move chronicled, their faces immortalized in these vibrant prints. They were the epitome of the AK spirit, effortlessly cool, fashionable, and larger than life. But let's follow this actor off the stage, back to his dressing room. The glamour of the footlights fades instantly. The room is small, crowded, and chaotic. The air is thick with the smell of sweat, lamp oil, and something else, the same metallic, slightly sweet scent you smelled in the printer's workshop. The actor sits before a small mirror, and the shocking reality of his glamorous appearance becomes clear. That iconic white face paint he wears, the ukiyo-e. It's the same lead-based powder that was used for the white pigment in the print. He is not just depicted with poison, he is slathering it directly onto his skin, night after night. To apply it, he would first coat his face with a thick, heavy wax called a bura. Then, he would mix the white lid powder with water to form a paste and paint it on, creating a smooth, mask-like surface. This mask would crack and flake under the hot stage lights, and it had to be constantly touched up. Over time, the lead would be absorbed through his skin, leading to all the same horrifying symptoms: colic, muscle tremors, nerve damage, and a slow, painful decline. Many famous actors suffered from mysterious illnesses and died young, their ailments almost certainly the result of chronic lead poisoning. The very tool of their trade, the mask that made them famous, was also their killer. The bold red lines painted on his face might be the toxic vermilion, the mercury sulfide, adding another layer of poison to the daily routine. Beyond the poison, the actor's life was one of rigid, almost military-like hierarchy and crushing pressure. You see, an actor was usually born into an acting family. His career began as a child apprentice, and he would spend his entire life within the closed, fiercely competitive world of a single theatrical troupe. The glamorous star you see on the print was, in reality, trapped. He could not simply quit and get another job. His entire identity, his social standing, and his income were tied to the theatre. The head of the troupe, the zamoto, held absolute power over him. The roles he got, the size of his name on the promotional banners, his pay, all of it was at the whim of the zamoto. A fall from favour could mean ruin. So why would anyone endure this? A life of poison, pressure, and near servitude? The answer lies in the strange social structure of Edo, Japan. Officially, actors, like merchants and artisans, were part of the chinin or townsman class, which was ranked below the samurai. In fact, actors were often considered heinin, or non-people, at the very bottom of the social ladder, alongside criminals and beggars. They were legally required to live in specific sections of the city and were forbidden from dressing like samurai. However, in the court of public opinion, they were idols. Their on-stage power and charisma gave them a form of celebrity that transcended their low official status. A successful actor could achieve immense fame and wealth, even if he was still considered social scum by the ruling class. This created a bizarre paradox. The actor was both despised and adored, a social outcast and a cultural icon. The only way to navigate this was to succeed, wildly and overwhelmingly. The pressure to be brilliant, to be popular, to sell tickets and sell prints, was immense. This fame was his only real power. So he endured the lead paint. He endured the tyranny of the zamoto. He endured the endless training and rehearsal. because the alternative was to be a nobody, an actual non-person with no fame, no money, and no adoration. His glamorous persona was a suit of armor, built from poison and pressure, that protected him from the harsh reality of his social standing. The print, therefore, is not just a poster. It's a piece of propaganda. It sells the myth of the actor's power, a myth the actor himself was desperate to cultivate. It captures the on-stage hero, not the off-stage man slowly being poisoned by his own makeup. It's an illusion he and the publisher were both deeply invested in selling. And this dynamic, this contrast between a beautiful, celebrated image and a harsh, captive reality, was even more pronounced in the prints of the other great stars of the floating world, the courtesans. The next print you examine is one of sublime elegance. It depicts a woman, or rather, a vision of a woman. She is dressed in a magnificent kimono, a cascade of silk dyed in subtle, breathtaking colors and embroidered with gold thread. The hair is an elaborate sculpture, adorned with a forest of expensive combs and hairpins. Her face, seen in profile, is a perfect, serene oval, her skin as flawless and white as the lead pigment used to render it. This is a print of a high-ranking courtesan, an oiran from the Yoshiwara, the licensed pleasure district of Edo. In the world of ukiyo-e, these women are portrayed as goddesses of beauty and culture. The illusion is that they are the queens of the floating world, paragons of fashion, poetry, and romance. They are not just beautiful, they are witty, intelligent, and accomplished artists in their own right. They seem to be women of immense power, choosing their patrons, setting trends, and living a life of luxurious self-determination. But this, like the actor's glamour, is a carefully constructed fantasy. Let's follow this vision of a woman back to the grand tea house where she lives. The moment you pass through the gates of the Yoshiwara district, the illusion of freedom begins to crumble. The entire district is surrounded by a moat, and the only way in or out is through a single, heavily guarded gate. This is not a neighborhood, it is a prison. A beautiful, well-appointed, and very profitable prison. The shocking reality is that the courtesan is, in every sense of the word, a captive. Most of these women were sold to the brothels as young girls, sometimes as young as 7, by impoverished rural families. They were indentured servants, bound by contract and a debt that was almost impossible to repay. The magnificent kimono she wears. The expensive hair ornaments. She doesn't own them. They were purchased for her by the brothel owner, and their exorbitant cost was added to her debt, ensuring she could never earn her freedom. Her life is a performance, even more grueling than the Kabuki actors. Her day is a rigid schedule of training. She must learn the arts of conversation, poetry, calligraphy, flower arranging, and how to play musical instruments. This wasn't for her own enrichment. It was to make her a more valuable commodity. Her witty conversation was scripted, her effortless grace the result of years of brutal discipline. Even the way she walked was prescribed. The highest-ranking oiran had to perform a procession through the streets, the famous oiran, wearing towering, 20 cm high lacquered clogs and a kimono that could weigh over 20 kilograms. This wasn't a fashion parade. It was a mobile advertisement for the brothel, and an agonizing physical ordeal, for the woman at its center. And her power to choose her patrons. It was a carefully managed piece of theater. The client could not simply walk in and demand her time. He had to spend lavishly at the tea house over multiple visits, proving his wealth and status, before he could even be considered. This elaborate ritual of courtship wasn't about her choice, it was about driving up the price. It was a marketing strategy, designed by the brothel owner to create an aura of exclusivity and desirability around his most valuable asset. The courtesan was the ultimate luxury good, and her humanity was secondary to her market value. Like the actor, she also used the toxic lead-based makeup, covering not just her face but her neck and chest in the poisonous white paint, a mask of purity that was slowly killing her. So why was this grim reality presented as such a beautiful fantasy? Why did the public, who knew the truth of the Yoshiwara, so eagerly consume these images of ethereal, empowered women? The answer is complex. For the male customers, the fantasy was part of what they were paying for. They weren't just buying intimacy, they were buying a brush with a world of high culture and unattainable beauty. The prints were souvenirs of this fantasy, allowing them to possess a piece of it. For the general public, including women, these prints were fashion magazines. The courtesans, with their access to the most expensive textiles and latest styles, were the trendsetters of the era. A new hairstyle or kimono pattern worn by a famous Hoiran would be instantly copied by the women of the city. But on a deeper level, the courtesan embodied the central theme of the floating world itself, a beautiful, fleeting pleasure that distracted from the harsh realities of a rigidly structured society. She was a dream of elegance and romance in a world of duty and obligation. The publishers and artists understood this perfectly. They weren't selling a portrait of a person. They were selling an escape. They colluded with the brothel owners to maintain the myth because the myth was what sold. The print of the serene, beautiful Oiran was a masterpiece of illusion, hiding a world of debt, captivity, and poison behind a flawless surface of silk and powdered lead. And this carefully managed illusion, this need to present a perfect and non-threatening face to the world, extended beyond just the subjects of the prints. It permeated the very act of their creation, under the ever-present gaze of a powerful authority. You are back in the publisher's office. He is examining a new design that has just been delivered from the artist's studio. It's a powerful image, a satirical take on a recent political scandal involving a foolish lord and his sycophantic advisors. It's clever, it's sharp, and it would almost certainly be a bestseller. The public would love it. Looking at the vibrant and diverse world of ukiyo-e, the raucous theatre scenes, the glamorous pleasure quarters, the bustling cityscapes, it's easy to get an impression of a free and open society. The art seems to bubble up from the streets, a boisterous and uncensored expression of popular culture. The illusion is one of creative liberty, a world where artists and publishers were free to comment on, celebrate or satirize any aspect of their society, their only master the fickle taste of the public. It seems like a golden age of artistic freedom. The publisher sighs, and with a brush and black ink he unceremoniously defaces the beautiful drawing, painting over the faces of the figures, obscuring the details that made the satire so pointed. He then writes a note to the artist, to direct. Redo as a scene from ancient history. The drawing, so full of life and wit a moment ago, is now worthless. This is the unseen hand that shaped every single print you have ever seen. The shocking reality is that the freewheeling world of ukiyo-e operated under a system of strict and unforgiving government censorship. Every single design, before it could be sent to the carver, had to be submitted to an official censor for approval. At the publisher's office, a nervous clerk bundles up the day's approved designs and carries them to a drab government building. Inside, a low-ranking samurai official, the Jiji or censor, sits at a desk. His job is not to judge the artistic merit of a print, but to enforce the shogun's will. He unrolls a drawing and scans it with a practiced, cynical eye. He is looking for violations of the sumptuary edicts and other regulations designed to maintain social order and uphold the authority of the samurai class. His gaze is a net, searching for any fish that dares to swim in forbidden waters. What is he looking for? The rules were extensive and, at times, arbitrary. It was forbidden to depict current political events, especially in a critical way. Satirizing a government official was a serious crime. It was illegal to depict members of the samurai class in the pleasure quarters, even though everyone knew they went there. It was forbidden to print the family crests of noble families. Lavish designs that encouraged luxury among the commoner classes were often banned. Even the names of courtesans could not be printed directly on the image, they had to be hinted at through clever visual puzzles. If the censor found a violation, he would stamp the design with a rejection mark. If he approved it, he would add a small, circular Kaiwame approved seal, and only then could the publisher proceed. The punishments for trying to circumvent the system were severe. A publisher could be fined ruinously, have his business shut down, or in extreme cases, be manacled or even exiled. Artists and carvers could face similar fates. The great publisher Tsutaya Jizeba, the patron of Utamaro, was financially devastated by the authorities for publishing books deemed too luxurious. The artist Utamaro himself was famously manacled for 50 days for creating a print depicting the 16th century warlord Toyotomi Hideyoshi with his consorts, a historical image that was interpreted as a veiled critique of the current shogun's decadent lifestyle. The experience is said to have broken his spirit, and he died shortly after. So why, given this oppressive system, does the art of ukiyo-e feel so vibrant and subversive? The answer lies in the endless cat and mouse game played by the artists, publishers, and censors. The regulations, rather than stamping out creativity, forced it to become cleverer, more subtle, and more reliant on symbolism. This is the why behind the strange visual language of many prints. The publisher's instruction to Rido as a scene from ancient history was a standard tactic. An artist could critique a current general by depicting a famously foolish general from a 12th century epic, giving him features that suspiciously resembled the contemporary figure. The public, savvy and literate in these codes, would understand this reference immediately, while the artist and publisher maintained plausible deniability. This game of imitate-e or parody pictures became a genre in itself. A print might show a group of ordinary townsmen acting out a famous scene from a classical tale, or depict a famous courtesan in the guise of a Buddhist deity. These visual puzzles were a way of talking about forbidden subjects in plain sight. It turned the act of viewing a print into a game, a shared secret between the creator and the audience. The censorship, ironically, made the art more engaging. It fostered a visual literacy and a love of intellectual games that became a hallmark of Edo culture. The censor's watchful eye did not crush the spirit of ukiyo-e. It forced it to become smarter, sharper, and more intimately connected with its audience. Every approved print that still managed to deliver a hidden jab was a small victory, a testament to the resilience of art in the face of authority. And this art, born of so much pressure and compromise, was destined for a surprisingly humble fate. You are standing in a modern museum. The lighting is low and carefully controlled. The air is climate-controlled, maintaining a precise level of humidity. Behind a thick sheet of protective glass rests a single print by Hokusai, perhaps his iconic Great Wave off Kanagawa. It is presented as a priceless masterpiece, a national treasure. The label next to it details the artist's life, the genius of the composition, the cultural significance. Security guards watch over it. The illusion is overwhelming and deeply ingrained in our modern consciousness. Ukiyo-e prints are high art. They are rare, precious objects, created for discerning collectors and destined for eternal preservation in the hallowed halls of culture. We see them as the Japanese equivalent of a Rembrandt etching or a Dürer engraving, the pinnacle of graphic art. Now, let's step out of the museum and back into a bustling street in 19th century. You are standing in front of a small shop, an eshiya, a picture book and print store. The shop is open to the street, and prints are displayed in stacks, fluttering in the breeze. A shop boy is calling out the latest arrivals, new prints of the actor Danger. Get your views of the Tokaido Road here. A customer, perhaps a noodle shop owner on his day off, ambles up. He flips through a stack of prints with his thumb, his hands not entirely clean. He haggles with the shopkeeper, buys 2 prints for the price of a cheap bowl of soup, and walks away with them tucked unceremoniously into the sash of his kimono. This is the shocking, and rather wonderful, reality of the print's original life. They were not high art. They were cheap, mass-produced, and utterly disposable. They were the popular media of their day, the equivalent of posters, baseball cards, celebrity magazines, and travel postcards, all rolled into one. The Great Wave, which we now treat with such reverence, was sold for about the same price as a double helping of soba noodles. Anyone with a little pocket money could own one. They were not made for the walls of palaces, but for the homes of ordinary people. They were pasted onto household screens, pinned to the walls of modest homes, or stored in albums to be flipped through with friends. The sheer disposability is staggering to our modern mindset. Prints were ephemeral things. When a new Kabuki series came out, fans would buy the latest designs and often discard the old ones. Prints were used for craft projects, cut up by children to play with. And here is the most jarring fact of all, the one that truly shatters the high art illusion. They were frequently used as packing material. When Japan opened to the West in the mid-19th century, European merchants buying Japanese ceramics and other goods would find them wrapped in these colourful old prints to prevent breakage during the long sea voyage. The paper, you'll remember, was tough and resilient, making it excellent for the job. The first European artists and collectors to discover ukiyo-e didn't find them in galleries, but in the trash heaps of ports like Rotterdam and Le Havre, or as wrapping paper on their porcelain. The birth of Japanism in Europe, the craze for Japanese art that so influenced artists like Van Gogh, Monet and Degas, was fueled by what was essentially Japanese garbage. So why was an art form created with so much skill, the artist's clever design, the carver's precision, the printer's physical labor treated as something so throwaway? The answer lies in its very purpose. It was never intended to be timeless. It was, by its very nature, timely. Ukiyo-e means pictures of the floating world, and floating implies transience. The prints were about what was new and now, the hot new actor, the latest fashion, the trending travel destination. Their value was in their currency, not their permanence. The publisher, remember, was a businessman. We needed to sell a high volume of product to turn a profit. The low price point and mass market appeal were the entire business model. He wasn't trying to create a timeless masterpiece for a museum. He was trying to sell 1,000 copies of a print before the public's attention shifted to something else. This context reframes the entire process. The assembly line studio, the durable cherry wood blocks, the brutally efficient printing process, all of it was designed to serve a mass market with cheap, beautiful, and up-to-the-minute goods. The art form's commercial, popular nature is not a dirty secret that cheapens it. It's the very source of its energy and vitality. It's what kept it so grounded in the real lives, tastes, and obsessions of the people who bought it. The fact that we now see them as masterpieces is a historical accident, a consequence of Western art critics applying their own standards of value to something from a completely different context. They were never meant to be behind glass. They were meant to be held, shared, enjoyed, and ultimately used up. The artists and craftsmen who made them would likely be baffled and perhaps a little amused by the hushed, reverent atmosphere of a modern museum exhibition. They would wonder why anyone would treasure the wrapping paper so dearly. And the tool that was so central to this mass production, the key to the printer's speed and skill, was itself a deceptively humble object. Let's return to the printer's workshop, to the epicenter of the physical labor. Your eyes are drawn to the tool in his hand, the one he uses to press the paper onto the inked block. It is the Baron. At first glance, it appears to be a simple, almost primitive object. It's a round, flat pad with a handle on the back, made from a dried bamboo sheath. It looks like a rustic kitchen utensil or perhaps a tool for polishing floors. In the grand narrative of art, we tend to focus on the elegant brush or the sharp chisel. The humble Baron seems like a mere accessory, a simple tool for applying pressure. The illusion is that it's just a functional, uncomplicated piece of equipment, its form dictated by pure utility. You could probably make one yourself, you think. Just a bit of padding and a cover. But now, the printer sets his Baron down, and you pick it up. It feels surprisingly heavy, solid, and complex in your hand. The bamboo sheath cover is stretched taut over the inner core, and the handle, also made of twisted bamboo, is worn smooth from years of use. You press on the flat bottom surface. It isn't a soft, uniform cushion. It feels hard, textured, and strangely alive beneath the surface. The shocking reality is that the Baron is not a simple pad. It is a highly sophisticated and secretly constructed piece of precision technology, the result of years of specialized craft and closely guarded knowledge. To make a real Baron is an art form in itself. Let's slice it open. Inside, you would not find a simple wad of cotton or cloth. The core is a flat disk made of dozens of layers of high-quality washi paper, the same kind used for the prints, lacquered together to form a stiff, lightweight backing plate. But the real secret, the engine of the Baron, is the coil. The craftsman takes a long, thin cord made of tightly twisted paper or bamboo fibers and weaves it into an intricate, flat spiral. This is not a random coil. It is a meticulously planned pattern. The tightness of the weave, the thickness of the cord, the number of braids, all these factors are carefully controlled to create a specific texture. This textured coil is then placed on the paper backing plate and the entire thing is sealed within the waterproof bamboo sheath, the takenoko. The tiny, hard bumps of the coil are what press the paper into the woodblock. They act like thousands of tiny, hard fingers, concentrating the printer's pressure into points, forcing the ink into the paper fibers with incredible efficiency. Construction was a trade secret, passed down from master to apprentice. Different printers preferred different types of Baron for different effects. A Baron with a coarse, high-contrast coil might be used for bold black outlines, while one with a finer, more subtle coil would be used for delicate color gradations. A printer would own several, each a specialized tool for a specific task. And this tool, this masterpiece of hidden engineering, inflicted a terrible toll on the body of the man who wielded it. The constant, repetitive pressure, the awkward posture, the sheer force required to use it effectively for 10 hours a day led to a host of chronic ailments. Printers suffered from debilitating back pain, arthritis in their hands and wrists, and permanent shoulder and elbow damage. The Baron, the very key to their art, was also the instrument of their physical destruction. Why go to such lengths to create this complex, body-wrecking tool? Why not just use a simple flat press or A roller. The answer lies in the subtle artistry that the bairn allowed. A mechanical press applies uniform, undifferentiated pressure. A roller is better, but still relatively indiscriminate. Only the bairn, in the hands of a skilled printer, allowed for control. The printer could vary the pressure on the fly, tilting the bairn slightly to apply more force to one area of the design, or using a circular motion to work the color into a specific texture. He could feel the block through the bairn, sensing how the paper was taking the ink. This tactile feedback was crucial. Remember the bokashi effect, the beautiful color gradations? That was achieved by the printer varying the pressure of his bairn on an unevenly wiped block. He was not just pressing, he was painting with pressure. The bairn was the perfect synthesis of power and subtlety. It was strong enough to produce thousands of impressions, but sensitive enough to allow for the most delicate artistic effects. It was a tool perfectly evolved for the specific needs of ukiyo-e, mass production combined with nuanced, painterly results. The publisher's need for quantity and the public's desire for beauty met in this one, deceptively simple-looking object. The illusion of its simplicity hides a reality of complex craftsmanship, while the beauty it creates hides the reality of the physical pain it inflicted. It was the perfect, paradoxical tool for a paradoxical art form. It allowed the printer to transform the materials, the paper, the block, and the ink into a finished whole. And that ink, the iconic black that formed the skeleton of every print, had its own story of messy creation. Your attention settles on the most fundamental element of the print, the black ink. The outlines, the calligraphic signatures, the powerful strokes of hair. This is the sumi, the black ink that forms the skeleton of every ukiyo-e design. When we think of this ink, we conjure a romantic, almost spiritual image. Picture a Zen monk in a silent temple, grinding a solid ink stick in a pool of clear water on a carved stone, a meditative and clean process. The ink itself seems pure, a distillation of blackness, its scent clean and earthy. The illusion is one of serenity and simplicity, of a natural, elemental substance being prepared through a quiet ritual. It is the ink of calligraphers and poets, a substance tied to high art and spiritual practice. But the ink used by the printer is not the same as the ink used by the poet. While it shares a common ancestor, the ink for printmaking needs to be produced in large quantities, and its creation is far from a serene, spiritual practice. You are now standing in a small, grimy building on the outskirts of the city. The air is thick and heavy with the smell of burning oil and soot. Your eyes sting. The walls and ceiling are coated in a thick layer of greasy black dust. This is where the main ingredient for your ink is made. Inside, a series of small, earthenware lamps burn a cheap vegetable oil, likely rapeseed or sesame. Over each lamp is a small terracotta cover. The flame burns with a smirky, inefficient flicker, and the soot, the unburnt carbon, collects on the inside of the cover. This is the shocking reality. The pure, elemental black of the ukiyo-e print begins its life as greasy, foul-smelling lamp black, scraped from the inside of a clay pot. A worker, his face and clothes permanently blackened, moves down the line of lamps, carefully removing the covers and, with a feather brush, sweeping the collected soot into a container. This is the raw pigment. But soot on its own is just a dry powder. It won't stick to the block or the paper. It needs a binder. So you follow the worker as he takes the collected soot to another workshop, one filled with a different, but equally unpleasant, smell. This is the smell of boiling animal parts. Here, cow hides, bones, and other animal connective tissues are boiled for hours in huge vats, to render them down into a gelatinous substance. This is nekawa, or animal glue. The stench of it is strong and deeply unpleasant, a smell of decay and processing. The final stage is the mixing. The collected pine soot and the smelly animal glue are combined in a large pot and heated. Perfumes like musk or Borneol camphor are often added at this stage, not for any artistic reason, but to mask the foul odor of the glue. The mixture is kneaded and pounded, over and over, until it forms a thick, homogeneous paste. For the high-quality, solid ink sticks used by calligraphers, this paste would be pressed into molds and slowly dried for months. But for the printer's workshop, it's often used as a raw paste or formed into rough, sheet balls. The printer will then take this paste and mix it with water to get the consistency he needs for his work. So why this smelly, dirty, industrial process? Why not just use the refined, elegant ink sticks of the calligraphers? The answer, as always, is a matter of economics and function, scale and cost. The printer needed vast quantities of ink to produce an edition of 1,000 prints. Grinding enough high-quality ink sticks would be prohibitively expensive and time-consuming. The raw materials for lampblack and animal blue, on the other hand, were cheap and plentiful. The process was designed for bulk production. Furthermore, the printer needed an ink with specific properties. It had to be sticky enough to adhere to the raised lines of the woodblock, yet release onto the paper under the pressure of the bearing. The animal glue provided the perfect viscosity and adhesive quality for this. The ink's formulation was a technical solution to a practical problem, not an aesthetic choice. The earthy, pleasant scent we associate with high-quality sumi ink comes from the slow, careful drying of the ink stick and the addition of refined perfumes. The printer's ink in its raw state was a functional industrial product, born of soot and boiled bones. The purity of that final black line is an illusion created by the process. It hides a messy, smelly, and deeply unpoetic reality. The entire system, the publisher's gamble, the artist's assembly line, the carver's precision, the printer's sweat, the flawed wood, the filthy paper-making, the toxic colors, and the sooty ink was a complex industrial machine. It was a machine designed to produce one thing, an escape. An escape into a realm known as the floating world. But the name of this world itself contains one final, profound illusion. We have arrived at the heart of it all. The concept that gives this art its name, ukiyo-e, pictures of the floating world. The phrase itself is beautiful, poetic, and deeply evocative. It conjures images of a life of effortless grace and transient pleasure. The illusion is right there in the name. We hear floating world and we imagine a whimsical, dreamlike realm detached from the mundane realities of life. A world of cherry blossoms scattering on the wind, of elegant parties on riverboats, of chance encounters under moonlight. It suggests a philosophy of living in the moment, of embracing beauty and pleasure as the highest calling. The prints, with their focus on theatres, tea houses, beautiful women, and scenic spots, seem to be a perfect reflection of this philosophy. They are windows into a world where everyone is fashionable, witty, and free from the drudgery of work or responsibility. It's a lovely, romantic idea. But the term ukiyo did not always have this meaning. Its origins are much darker. The shocking reality is that the word was originally a Buddhist term, written with different characters, meaning the sorrowful world or the world of grief. It described the transient, earthly plane of existence, a place of suffering, attachment, and illusion from which one hoped to escape through enlightenment. It was a world of pain and impermanence. Sometime in the 17th century, as the merchant class in cities like Edo began to prosper, they performed a kind of philosophical jujitsu on the word. They co-opted the term, but changed the first character to one meaning to float. They kept the idea of transience, but stripped it of its sorrowful, Buddhist connotations. This was a radical act of cultural rebranding. The new ukiyo was a conscious, almost defiant, rejection of the old one. It was a declaration that if life is transient and fleeting, then one shouldn't renounce it in sorrow, one should embrace its pleasures. If everything is going to disappear anyway, you might as well have a good time. This new floating world was not a philosophical state of being, it was a specific, physical place. It was the collective name for the licensed entertainment districts of Edo, the Kabuki theatres, the Yoshiwara pleasure quarter, the sumo wrestling arenas and the surrounding restaurants and towers. It was a world of cash transactions, a commercial ecosystem built to provide a temporary escape from the rigid, hierarchical society outside its borders. So why this need for such a deliberate and commercially driven escape? The answer lies in the deeply repressive nature of the Tokugawa shogunate. For the vast majority of people, life was not a whimsical float. It was a grind. You were born into a class, and you stayed there. The samurai had their strict codes of honor and duty. The farmers were bound to their land. And the chinin, the townspeople, the merchants and artisans who were the primary consumers of ukiyo-e were officially at the bottom of the social hierarchy, below even the farmers. Despite the fact that many merchants were becoming far wealthier than the samurai, they were denied political power and social prestige. Their lives were governed by endless rules, from the kind of clothes they could wear to the size of the house they could build. The floating world was a safety valve. It was a space where the rigid rules of class could, for a price, be temporarily suspended. In the Taos, a wealthy merchant's money spoke louder than a poor samurai's rank. In the theatre, everyone could share in the same drama. It was a world where status was determined by taste, style, and spending power, not by birth. The publisher, the artist, the courtesan, the actor, they were all entrepreneurs in this escape economy. The prints they created were the advertisements, the guidebooks, and the souvenirs for this world. They weren't just pictures of the floating world, they were an essential part of the machinery that made the floating world function. They promoted its stars, codified its fashions, and sold its dream of temporary freedom to a populace hungry for it. The illusion of a whimsical, carefree philosophy hides the reality of a gritty, commercial world born out of social and political frustration. The floating world wasn't a zen-like state of mind, it was a business plan. It was a brilliantly marketed lifestyle brand for a rising class with money to spend, but no other outlet for their ambition or desire for self-expression. It was a fleeting, expensive, and ultimately artificial paradise. And this very idea of fleetingness, of transience, was built into the very substance of the prints themselves, in a way we now struggle to understand. You are back in the quiet, climate-controlled museum, standing before a print. Or perhaps you're a conservator in a lab, leaning over a print with a delicate tool. The colours, you notice, are not as bright as they could be. The sky blue is muted, the vibrant red has softened to a gentle orange, the brilliant purple has faded to a dull brown. Your instinct, your entire modern training, tells you this is a tragedy. The goal of modern conservation is to arrest this decay. We see fading as a flaw, a sign of damage, a loss of the artist's original intent. The illusion we cherish is that of permanence. We believe the artist and printer chose their colours for maximum vibrancy, and that their ideal version of the print is the one that came fresh off the block, with its colours screaming at full intensity. We build dark galleries and use special glass and spend fortunes on digital restorations, all in an effort to preserve or recreate that moment of pristine, permanent colour. We are fighting a war against time on behalf of the art. But what if we have it all wrong? What if the fading isn't the tragedy? What if the fading is the point? Let's go back to the printer's workshop for one last time. He is mixing his colours. He has a choice. For blue, he could use the stable, permanent, and very expensive indigo, or he could use agame, a beautiful, bright blue pigment derived from the dayflower tsukusa. He often chooses the dayflower. For purple, he could try to mix a stable pigment, but instead, he often uses a fugitive colour derived from the Growell plant. He knows, and the publisher knows, that these colours are not stable. They know that the brilliant blue of the dayflower will begin to fade in a matter of months if exposed to light. They know the purple will turn brown. This is the final, most profound, and most shocking reality of ukiyo-e. The prints were often designed to be impermanent. The choice of fugitive, fading pigments was not always an accident or a cost-cutting measure. It was a conscious aesthetic choice, deeply rooted in the very philosophy of the floating world they depicted. Remember, ukiyo-e is all about transience. The beauty of the cherry blossom is so potent precisely because it lasts only for a few days. The fame of a courtesan is a fleeting thing. The life of a Kabuki actor is a brief flash of brilliance on the stage. The entire culture was an embrace of mono no aware, a gentle sadness or awareness of the impermanence of all things. The prints were not meant to be static, timeless objects. They were meant to participate in this process. A print of a summer festival, bought in the heat of August with its brilliant, dayflower blue sky, would, by winter, have already begun to soften and fade. The colours of the print would change with the seasons, just like the world it depicted. The artwork was alive. It had its own lifespan. It aged, just like its owner. The fading was not a flaw, it was a feature. It was a slow, built-in reminder of the transient nature of beauty and of life itself. The publisher and artists were not creating for a museum in 200 years. They were creating for a customer in Edo, for whom the concept of transient beauty was a deeply understood and appreciated cultural value. This changes everything. Our modern fight for preservation, our quest to lock the print in a state of permanent perfection, may be a fundamental violation of its original spirit. We are, in a sense, embalming something that was meant to live and die. We are turning a living participant in the flow of time into a static, taxidermied specimen. Because our own culture is obsessed with permanence, with legacy, with cheating death. We see art as a way to achieve immortality. The culture that created ukiyo-e had a different view. Art was a way to celebrate and participate in the beautiful, sad, and inevitable dance of mortality. The fading colors were a quiet poem, written in chemistry, about the nature of existence. And so, the quiet heroism of the publisher, the artist, the carver, and the printer was not in creating an object that would last forever. It was in pouring so much skill, so much labor, and so much life into something they knew was destined to change and fade. It was an act of profound generosity. They were creating a moment of intense beauty, knowing full well it could not last, which is perhaps the most beautiful and human act of all. The slow, steady work of these craftsmen was a monument not to permanence, but to the exquisite, heartbreaking beauty of the fleeting moment. The story of the woodblock print is complete. The publisher's ambition has been fulfilled. The artist's lines have been carved. The printer's hands are stained with the colors of a world that was always meant to disappear. And as the last of these images settles in your mind, a quiet descends. The bustling workshops grow still. The frantic energy of Edo fades into a soft hum, a distant memory. The noise of the city, the clatter of the workshops, the sharp voices and the rhythmic pounding all begin to recede now, leaving behind only a gentle, peaceful silence. You can feel the tension leaving your own shoulders, the worries of your own world floating away, just like the name suggests. The vibrant colors of the prints begin to soften in your mind's eye, their sharp edges blurring into a gentle wash, like watercolor touched by a soft rain. The faces of the actors and the courtesans, once so vivid, now become serene and distant, their stories told, their performances over. They take a final, graceful bow and exit the stage of your thoughts, leaving behind only a sense of quiet appreciation. There is no more pressure, no more deadlines, no more toxic dust or aching backs. All the frantic, hidden labor has resolved into a single, peaceful image, and even that image is now beginning to dissolve into the comfortable darkness behind your closed eyes. The story is over. The work is done. All that is left is the deep, restorative quiet of the night. There is nothing more you need to do, nothing more to analyze or understand. Simply let the gentle current of your own breathing carry you away from the floating world and into the soft, silent world of your own deepest sleep.